Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome to part 3 of the Gravely tractor build. The last part I showed us moving the tractor, and it moved back and forth. Everything worked hydraulic wise, and I was pretty ecstatic. And I got home and I remembered I didn't check the steering. I didn't think the steering was going to work because I deleted the front cylinder, hydraulic cylinder, and just tied the lines together. So I went back down, cranked it up, it wouldn't turn. So I pulled the pump off. I come back, broke the pump down, checked everything out. The commutator ring was broke, so I welded it back together, put everything back together. And for some reason in my mind, I was thinking the reason why it wouldn't turn, one, because I didn't have a cylinder on it, and two, there wasn't pressure building up in the orbital valve here. So I put it all back together, went down. I took the ram off the back of the 3-point hitch and hooked it up to the steering, cranked it up, and the steering would turn, I don't know, maybe an inch. The steering wheel would turn an inch each way, but when it did that, the cylinder went in and out, but that would not be useful. I mean, you couldn't use it that way. So I pulled the pump back off, come back, and I have proceeded for the last couple of days to tear this pump down, or this valve down, sorry, and try to figure out what's going on. The only thing I can figure out is maybe the commutator ring is a little bit too thin, and if you can see up here, this is the end of the block that goes on it, and it turns fine right now. And when you put everything together, it turns fine. But when you start torquing the top bolts up, it locks it up. So we played with it, ground this, filed that, machined this. Never could get it to work after we torqued it down. So I was thinking today, what if I put a spacer in between here? That goes in there. What if I put a spacer in between that, if it would work? So I cut out a piece of cardboard, put it in there, torqued it down, and it still turned fine. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to head over to the shop, and I'm going to take a piece of flashing and cut out a seal that'll go on the outside, put it all back together, and see if that will work. Put it on there, see if it'll work. I called the company, asked about rebuild kits for this, to send this back, to send my core back and have them rebuild it. It's like $1,100 to have them send me a new one out, which they don't even have a core, would be like $1,900. So that's nowhere in a budget for this type of build. I've also looked at doing like universal spool valves, and that's still not off the table. But just getting all these different fittings lined up and in place is just kind of a pain. So for right now, I'm going to build this out of a piece of flashing, put it all back together, throw it on, and see what happens. I have welded the commutator back for like the 8th time. I think there's more places on that welded than not. I'm not sure if that'll work or not. But this is what I built. I didn't fool with getting the outside done well. It really don't matter because it's going to go over. The inside's what you need. So I'm going to throw this back together and see if when I torque it down, if we can get it to rotate. I got it torqued down to the recommended 19 foot-pounds, and it's turning. So that's one step forward. I'm not sure if it's going to leak like crazy around that or not, but I mean, it's worth a shot. It's worth a try. I have to go down now and install this, which is an absolute pain. So that will be tomorrow probably. It'll be in the same video, but I'm not getting too hopeful until I see it work. So hopefully you could tell from that video that was shot through a headlamp and a phone that the shim that I built worked, so that was good. Also, the ram up front that was going in and out is not the ram that I need for the steering. That's one I pulled off the 3-point hitch just to test out the valve. Also, I don't know if you could tell or not, but the top of the orbital valve was leaking through here. And I replaced, or I put 2 seals in that, and then on the bottom I put a little bit of RTV and let it cure. I'm going to torque this down to see if that will stop the leak. The original O-ring on the inside of that was shot pretty bad. On the way down last night, when I was getting ready to install the valve, which is a pain to install, I said if I have to pull this out for any more reason, I'm not going to. Or if I have to pull the top off or have to pull the valve out, I'm going to cut the brace out, just because it is such a pain to work around this big brace. So what I did is I cut the brace off and I just added metal on the top and bottom tabs. That way I can just put a big bolt through it, tighten it down. If I ever had to pull it off again, I just pull these 2 bolts out and I have free range on the inside to do work. I just blew through some holes with the plasma cutter. That way I don't have to drill a bunch of holes. 2 should do it, because it should brace at the top and the bottom and not have any wiggle room. If it does cause a problem, I'll just go back and weld it, no big deal. So I'm going to head down right now and reinstall. So the steering nightmare continues. I hope you can hear me over the rain. I got down to the building, I got it hooked up in the pouring rain, got it pulled in, and I was getting ready to put the top of the steering back on, and I have realized that there's a collar that goes between here and here on the pump. Oh, so I'm going to have to pull this whole middle section out. Hopefully I can pull it out, slide that collar on there, and get it put back in without having to pull the pump. So I have to go home and grab the collar. I'm just going to come back tonight and do it. So yeah, like I said, the steering nightmare continues. Before I went home, I figured I would check and make sure these plates that I built worked. And this side fit perfectly. The other side had a cut on it a lot. So this steering is even worse of a nightmare. Does anybody else use paint to mark holes? So I got the steering valve put back together, everything tightened up. I got it mounted. I've not tightened it up yet. That right there worked perfect that I built. I'm going to take this off one more time just to tighten down the top. It wasn't leaking nearly as bad as it was. You can't see, but there's still a little bit of a seep right up there. So what I'm going to do is just tighten it down a little bit more and see if that takes care of it. So for all intents and purposes, the steering is almost finished. It's not leaking out the top anymore, which is great. So this will be the end of part 3 in the steering saga. So I guess after this I'm going to finish the front part of the steering to get it to turn and then rewire. As always, thanks for watching.